Good evening, good evening, good evening. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday, everyone. And welcome to the Monday edition of the Dog Call. Today, we're going to discuss the new top 5 teams in the SEC. We also have a new number 1 team in the nation. Congratulations to the Oregon Ducks. An impressive win up in Purdue on Friday night, due to the fact that my Georgia Bulldogs went down to Austin and kicked ass on Saturday night. The Oregon Ducks are currently the new number 1 team. So, what does that mean? That means there's a shakeup in the SEC and there's a shakeup in my top 5 SEC football team ranking. So we're going to talk about that. So get your popcorn ready. This is the Dog Call. Good evening and welcome to the Dog Call. I'm your host, Armando Black. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It's October the 21st. Beautiful sunny Monday in the state of Georgia, in the Peach State. Salute, salute, salute. The sun is shining on Dog Nation today. We're basking in our glory. And look, hey, I'm not going to be shy about it. No one gave Georgia a chance. No one gave Georgia an opportunity to go into Austin and do what they did. All the so-called experts on the networks were already crowning Texas the new kings of the South, new kings of the SEC. Some were even crowning them, saying that they were going to cakewalk their way to a national title this year. I mean that definitely was ridiculous. And the thing that I cautioned everybody about, and I'm going to be honest with you, I picked my Georgia Bulldogs, really didn't feel too confident about it because and it didn't have anything to do with Texas. It had nothing to do with Texas. It was the fact that we did not look good in the secondary against Mississippi State, and our performance in the second half of that game kind of gave me a little pause. But I cautioned everybody that Texas had not been tested. Texas had not been tested. You see, iron sharpens iron. There's a lot of truth to that quote right there. Iron sharpens iron. You don't know what you're working with until you go play somebody. Playing UTSA, San Antonio, and Mississippi State, and Oklahoma, they've been hit with injuries. I think that game would have been a hell of a lot more competitive. Just look at it now. Oklahoma's down 3 O linemen. They're down like 3 D linemen, and they're missing 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their top wide receivers. That's a tall order, and then they can't figure it out at quarterback. So this Oklahoma team, this is pretty much their rebuilding year. This is they're trying to find an identity. So they were not a legitimate opponent for Texas. So the media was just hyping them up, just hype. And Paul, one thing I can understand, the one thing I respect about Paul Feinbaum on his podcast yesterday, he pretty much just came out and he was totally blatantly honest about it. He said the networks, they were looking for a new shiny toy for a new flavor of the month, and Texas was it. They were winning games. They were undefeated in the SEC. But the thing about it isn't, like I always caution you all, a lot of those guys, they've never played the game of football. They don't know X's and O's. They just talk. They're getting paid to talk. A lot of those guys are handed scripts. They're handed scripts. And they're being told what to say. Over here, I know X's and O's. I played the game of football. Okay. I've studied the game of football. I did a little coaching in the game of football on the high school level. And the thing about it is, in order for a team to be successful, you have to schedule some competition in the early part of the season. You cannot backload your schedule. When you backload your schedule, that is a recipe for disaster. And we found that out last year. As a Georgia Bulldog fan, we found that out last year. The schedule last year was just ridiculous. It was a cakewalk. And it really wasn't our fault. It was Greg Sankey and the SEC once again screwing around with Georgia, taking Oklahoma off the schedule, which made no sense. Which made no damn sense. Texas and Bama wasn't taking off Texas's schedule last year. Okay, they got a chance to play that game, but they took a game off the schedule that Oklahoma and Georgia had scheduled for what, 5 years? This was in the making for 5 years, and then in the 11th hour, they removed that game from the schedule. So that game had to be replaced with a cupcake. So technically, Georgia was not tested. They were not tested until the SEC championship game by a legitimate defense. Ole Miss, they had an elite offense, but their defense was suspect. Tennessee had an elite offense last year, but their defense was suspect. Auburn, rebuilding. They were in rebuilding mode. Florida right now, Florida is just on the bottom tier of the SEC. So Georgia really had no test until Atlanta last year. So the same thing that happened to the Georgia Bulldogs last year pretty much happened to Texas this year. Okay, and like I said before, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but I really do believe it was no accident that Texas was given a cakewalk of a schedule. Just think back, look back to all the teams that were brought into the SEC. Go back to 2012 when Texas and Missouri aligned with the SEC. When they came into began conference play in the SEC, they were thrown to the wolves. Missouri had to play Bama and Georgia in the same year. Texas A&M had to play Bama, LSU, Florida, Auburn. Remember, at the time, Auburn was 2 years removed from a national title. Auburn was a powerhouse during that time. Well, in 2012, they went 0-8 in the SEC, but they were coming off a pretty good season in 2011. So those two teams were thrown to the wolves. Now let's look at this year. Oklahoma and Texas comes into the SEC. Oklahoma's thrown to the wolves. Look at that schedule compared to what Texas has. Texas, their toughest games are only going to be Georgia and Texas A&M. They don't see Ole Miss. They don't see Tennessee. They don't see Bama. And they don't see LSU. They don't see nowhere near the level of talent that Oklahoma sees. Okay, so Oklahoma has to play Auburn, Tennessee. Then they have to deal with Texas. Then they have to play Alabama, LSU. I mean, think about it. That's a gauntlet compared to what Texas was given. So I mean, do I believe Texas was given some preferential treatment coming into the season when it comes to the schedule? Here, yes, I really do believe it. But the thing about it, what they didn't count on is they didn't count on the fact that Georgia would remain this good. They didn't count on the fact that Texas A&M would become elite, and they have. That defense is elite. And that defense is going to be a problem for Texas. If Texas struggled the way they did against Georgia, they're going to have issues against Texas A&M in Kyle Field. And that game is going to be in Kyle Field. So that water bottle stunt that the Longhorns fans pulled Saturday night, it's not going to help them in Kyle Field. And then, like I said Saturday night on the post-game show, you better watch out for Vandy. Watch out for Vandy. Longhorn fans, don't think you're going to go to Nashville and run rough shot on Vanderbilt. That is a totally different Vanderbilt team. You have to take them serious. Now, let's get down to the meat and potatoes of this live. You know, y'all know normally I would do the top 5 on a Tuesday or maybe even a Wednesday, but as the season go along, I'm going to start knocking these out on Mondays. All right. So, like we always do. And this is from my eye test. I know some of you are not going to disagree, but this is from my eye test of what I see in the order that I'm putting these teams in the rankings. And I'm putting them in the exact order that I feel that they should be put in. So, drum roll, please. And the week 9 top 5 college football SEC teams for this week 9 go in this order right here. For a second, let me take this banner down. This is it right here. And let me explain to a lot of you. It looks different. Looks very different from last week. And I'm going to start from 5 up to 4, and I'm going to explain why I have them in this order. Tennessee, congratulations, great win against Bama. Great win against Bama. That's your first signature win of the season. That's your first signature win of the season. Now, Bama is not the same Bama from last year. Bama is nowhere near the same Bama from the last 10 years. Bama actually has been struggling. And I've said this repeatedly, and some people just don't, they don't understand or they don't agree with me for whatever reason. But Bama could easily right now be they could have easily been 3-3. I've said that they could easily be 3-3. They got lucky against Georgia. A lot of you know that. And if you don't know by now, then you know that win against Georgia was nothing but a damn fluke. They had no business winning that game. They got lucky with a couple of big plays down the field. Hey, a broke clock can be right twice a day. And that's a fact. Okay. They got lucky against South Carolina. They got lucky against South Carolina. Actually, see, Georgia, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. This team could be 3-4. My bad, everyone. This Bama team right now could easily be 3-4. They should have lost to Georgia. They definitely should have lost to South Carolina. They lost to Vandy and they lost to Tennessee. This team could be 3-4. They're lucky lucky, and I do mean lucky to be what I think they're what 5-2. They're lucky to be 5-2 right now. Now, mathematically, they're still alive for the playoffs. They're still alive for the playoffs. They're ranked number 15, but they're in striking distance. So they're not mathematically eliminated. But as far as getting to Atlanta, that's going to be a tall order, which means if they do look up and get in the playoffs, they're going to be traveling. They're 9 times out of 10, they're going to be going on the road. And the problem is that Tennessee holds the tiebreaker over Bama. And that win over Georgia means nothing as long as Georgia keeps winning. Georgia only has 1 loss. Bama has 2. Now so I have Tennessee at number 5 because they played a great game against Bama. They only have 1 loss. Remember this now. Tennessee only has 1 loss. Now here's the funny thing about it with Tennessee. Tennessee has a very important matchup in Athens here in a couple of weeks. Now, they win that game, I think they have a clear path to Atlanta. But if they lose, I think they still have a very good shot at making the playoffs due to the fact that they beat Bama head to head and they hold the tiebreaker over Bama. So Tennessee could still lose to Georgia. And as long as they win out and finish 10-2, they are definitely a playoff team. There's no way in hell that I could see them dropping past 11 or 12. There's no scenario I can see that happening with them finishing at 10-2. So Tennessee is my number 5 team from my eye test. Okay, now the reason why I have Tennessee at number 5 because the other 4 teams in front of them in this ranking, I feel on a neutral site, they could beat Tennessee head to head. Texas, number 4. Okay, now I know everybody's saying, well, they got dominated by Georgia at home on a Saturday night. They got embarrassed by Georgia. Well, I will say this. Georgia, if Georgia hasn't proved that when they come out and they're a focus, and this is the scary part about it for everyone else in the SEC, this Georgia team has not yet played a full, complete game on both sides of the ball. The defense played 60 minutes. The offense was more like game managing. The offense basically didn't do anything to mess it up Saturday night. So the offense kind of remind me of the 2021 offense, but that defense, the light switch is on, ladies and gentlemen. The light switch has come on for that defense. That defense has gone back to the dark days of 2021 and 2022. If that defense can do that to that Texas offense, and that Texas offense has a fleet of weapons, and I do mean a fleet of weapons. If they can do that and pay close attention, if they can do that to this Texas offense, they can do that to any team. Because Texas is one of the few teams that has weapons. And I do mean weapons and an O-line, a stacked, big, physical O-line. So Texas, that defense was legit. Remember, they held my dogs to only 7 points in the second half. So that defense is legit. So the notion that Texas was overrated and Texas is that's BS. That's a tough team. But the thing about it is my Georgia Bulldogs are just that damn good. And a lot of you just need to wake up and realize it and accept the fact that my Georgia Bulldogs are just that damn good. So I have Texas at number 4 because I do believe on a neutral site anywhere they could beat the Tennessee Volunteers head to head. Number 3, my number 3 team is LSU. They're in the same spot they were in last week. LSU, and this will work itself out. because LSU and A&M are meeting head to head this coming Saturday in Kyle Field, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait. This will be pretty much a de facto playoff game for LSU. LSU, it is imperative they win this game. If LSU can win this game, that takes them another that puts them another giant step. And LSU has had a gauntlet. Next to Georgia and Florida, LSU has had a tough schedule this year, a tough one. Even their out of conference games were not easy. USC, UCLA, LSU was hit with a tough road. All right, you have to play the Aggies You had to play the Aggies. You had to play Bama. They have to deal with Oklahoma. They had to go into Little Rock and play Arkansas. They had to go to Vegas and play USC, which that was pretty much a de facto home game. Then they had to go to Columbia, which is dangerous, a place that a lot of teams in the last 15 years, a lot of teams in the SEC in the last 15 years have had a hard time winning there, including Clemson. When Clemson was running things there for a minute, they had a hard time with that South Carolina team. So LSU, and what the thing with LSU that makes what they're doing so impressive, you got to remember, they were hit hard with the injury bug. As a matter of fact, I would go as far as saying they were hit harder by the injury bug than my Georgia Bulldogs. They were losing D lineman, losing O lineman. They lost their number one running back, John Emery Jr., against the Trojans. And then they lose Perkins, Harold Perkins. Harold Perkins, the captain of that defense. The guy, can you imagine if they had Perkins and Emery healthy and available? This LSU team would be doubly dangerous. But the fact that they are winning without these two individuals is just remarkable. Brian Kelly, whether you love him or hate him, you got to put some respect on that man's name. The man has done a hell of a coaching job this year. And I know that Clark Lee right now is the leading candidate for Coach of the Year in the SEC, maybe National Coach of the Year, depending on what goes on in Indiana and Illinois and BYU. All right. You got some candidates for that National Coach of the Year, but for the SEC Coach of the Year right now, I think Clark Lee is running away with it right now. But if there is a second place coach that would definitely get my vote, it would be Brian Kelly, because he's doing it, having to deal with a gauntlet of a schedule, and the man has had to deal with some serious injuries. I mean, players dropping like flies, season-ending injuries, not injuries where they sit on the sidelines for 3 or 4 weeks and come back and heal up and come back. No, I mean, he's getting hit with players that season-ending injuries, and that is rough. That can be rough on the head coach. So LSU is my number 3 team. Number 2, Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is a very complete team. I think they played with their food a little bit with Mississippi State. Mississippi State is sneaky good, even though they're in last place in the SEC. There's no breathing room in the SEC. No breathing room in the SEC. Like Coach Kirby Smart has said many times, it's not easy going on the road. No matter where you're going to play, it's not easy going on the road, winning the game in the SEC. So Texas A&M, I think they have an elite, deep defense, and especially that defensive line and that secondary, where I think they can give any offense in the SEC some problems. All right, so Texas A&M is my number 2 team for this week. For now, let's see what happens Saturday night against LSU in Kyle Field. And at number 1, my Georgia Bulldogs. back at number one where they belong, back at number one where they should be. And like I've been saying since that Bama game, since that fluke of a win, that was nothing but a fluke. Georgia should be undefeated. Georgia is a hell of a lot better, a hell of a lot better than what you saw on September 28th. Remember that old saying, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. because because listen, can't nobody tell me that that same Georgia Bulldogs football team that you've seen in Austin, if that team would have showed up in Tuscaloosa on the 28th of September, they wouldn't have beat Bama by 2 or 3 touchdowns. They would have ran them out of Brian Denny. And the thing about these all these so-called sports experts that were running their mouth after the Bama game, you see, they conveniently failed to mention the fact that Mykal Williams did not play in that game against Bama. No Jordan Hall. Uh, Jalen Walker was banged up throughout most of that game. All right. Um, we had players in the secondary that were also banged up. We did not have Tate Rattler. We were hit with some injuries. No Warren Brinson. Warren Brinson makes a big difference on that D line. Warren Brinson makes a huge difference in that pass rush. And we did not have Warren Brinson for the Bama game. So this notion that you know that game pretty much defined our season, no. And the polls, the AP and the coaches poll, it's like that game never really happened because they're dismissing it as a fluke. Because look where we're at now on October the 21st, a little under a month later. Bama is 15. My Georgia Bulldogs are number 2 in the nation. And a lot of people feel like they're number 1. A lot of people feel like that Georgia should have been put in that number 1 spot. But I'm good with being number 2 because Oregon, I'll be honest with you. If Ohio State and Texas play head to head tonight, my money would be on Ohio State. I'm just being totally honest with you. I'm not saying that Ohio State could go into Austin and dominate them the way we did, but I think that Ohio State team could probably go into Texas and beat them in a shootout. I will say that. Because they can match Texas weapon for weapon. And I think Ohio State's defense may be just a little bit better than Texas. So if you ask me who has the better win as a Georgia Bulldog fan, I'm going to be totally honest and tell you that Oregon right now has the best win of the season. What they did to Ohio State, you cannot just sweep that under the rug. you have to acknowledge the fact that they beat a team that a lot of us, including myself, believe that probably was unbeatable in the regular season this year. But hey, that's neither here or there. Some of you may disagree with me. Some of you may feel where Georgia should be number 1 and Oregon should be number 2. I mean, that remains to be seen. Oregon has a very tough contest coming up on Saturday against Illinois. And Illinois Illinois is no joke. That defense is clicking on all cylinders, and that offense is clicking on all cylinders. That is a legitimate opponent. It doesn't matter that the game is in Eugene. That is going to be a game, and that is going to be a tough test for Oregon. Oregon also has Michigan coming up, which I think they should be able to handle Michigan with no problems. Penn State, okay, so right now Penn State is somewhere right around, I'm not mistaken, Penn State is ranked number 3. Penn State is ranked number 3. Some Penn State fans feel like they should be number 2 or even number 1. They're 7-0, but the problem is Your only legitimate test was against Illinois, and you came that close to losing that game at home. So nobody is really buying stock on Penn State right now because we want to see what you're going to do against Ohio State. You see, that's your signature game. We like Tennessee won their signature game. They had a couple of signature games on their schedule. They got past one Saturday. That was Bama. Georgia's main signature game on the schedule, and a lot of people had us losing this game against Texas, and Georgia passed the test. So Penn State, can you pass the test against Ohio State? That's what everybody want to see. Can you beat the Buckeyes? Can you do what Oregon did? That's what everybody want to see. You got Ohio State at home. Beat Ohio State, and I think without a doubt, uh, the polls will probably put you at 1 or 2, right up under Oregon, depending on how, if you do a better job against Oregon. That's what they're going to do. They're going to compare numbers, stats, and numbers versus what Oregon did with Ohio State at home versus what Penn State does with Ohio State at home. So you Penn State fans, tamper down. Your time is coming. Your chance is coming. You know, I don't feel that like you're being slighted. Yeah, but it's like the Texas situation with Texas. They didn't play anyone, and people was hyping them up, hyping them up, hyping them up. And I told everyone, listen, this team ain't been tested. Who you play matters. It really does matter, you know. So if you're not tested and then you just thrown to the wolves against a team that's experienced in big games, and a team that has been battle tested throughout the year like Georgia was, that can spell as a recipe for disaster. That can spell as a recipe for disaster. Not only against Georgia, but also against Vandy next week, because Vandy is a problem. They're on a winning streak. They are a problem. They're ranked for the first time in since 2013. First time in 11 years that Vandy has been ranked. So their confidence is at an all-time high, and deservedly so. Deservedly so. So there no, from this point on, from here on out to November the 30th, there's no breathing room. There's no margin of error. And these games are definitely gonna matter. So this Texas A&M LSU game is gonna pretty much be a de facto playoff game. Both teams have an out of conference loss. Uh, Texas A&M's out of conference loss to Notre Dame looks a hell of a lot better than LSU's out of conference loss to USC. LSU cannot afford to lose this game to A&M, because then what they're going to do is, the committee, they're going to look more at that USC loss. They're going to look more at that USC loss. So you combine the USC loss with the A&M loss, and your playoff chances are looking like Bama's right now. So it is imperative. I think the Aggies can afford a loss and still, long as it's close and it's not a blowout, I think the Aggies would still be in good shape as long as they take care of business on the 30th of November against the Longhorns. And that game will become even more important if the Aggies win or lose. That game, could become very important. That game could be for a trip to Atlanta. So this thing is getting crazy. Like I said, and we're nowhere near done. We're nowhere near done. And like I said back in that Monday after the Bama Georgia game, I told all of you, we've only just begun. I told all of you, we've only just begun. It's a long season. It's a long season. And you Bama fans, you were hating, you were nitpicking, you were laughing. And I told all of you, I told you, quit listening to ESPN. Quit listening to Paul Feinbaum. Quit listening to Heather Dinich. Quit listening to Laura Rutledge. Quit listening to them clowns on SEC Nation and SEC Now, because they are scripted and paid to hype you up because you are a big brand. They're looking at the brand. They're not looking at the team. I was looking at the team. This 2024 team is nowhere near on the level that it has been on in the last 10 to 15 years. That's the cold hard truth. You're not. You look like a Pac-12 team. Bama looks like a Pac-12 team right now. That defense went in the locker room on the night of September the 28th at halftime. And since that night, that defense has been missing ever since. I told all of you, listen, I'm about ready to call the Tuscaloosa Police Department and report all 11 of them guys missing, because they have not been seen since the night of the 28th. As a matter of fact, somebody call Nancy Grace. Call Nancy Grace and report all 11 of them guys missing, because I ain't seen them since the night of the 28th. They have not showed up since. For real. Make some t-shirts, make some flyers, put all of their faces on the back of a milk carton, because they have been missing since the night of the 28th. And as long as they continue to stay missing, Bama fans, it's only going to get worse. So don't get mad because I don't have you in the top 5. You know in your heart, you are not in the top tier of the SEC this year. Not with that weak ass secondary and that pathetic defensive line. You're not. You're relying off of big plays, big explosive plays, in which there's nothing wrong with that. If you have a defense like you did in 18 and 19 and 20, because guess what? You relied on the big play then. You relied on the big play then. The only difference is you had a defense those years. You had a defense and a decent secondary. You had Surtain, Fitzpatrick. You had some dudes in the secondary. You don't have that anymore. You don't have that. You don't even have a Kool-Aid McKinstry in the secondary. You don't have a Trey Amos in the secondary. You don't have a Caleb Downs in the secondary. You don't have that in the secondary. Malachi Moore, he all right, but he ain't on that level of what we've come accustomed to seeing, the level of product that the Tide and that Nick Saban dynasty will have out on that field. That's what you're missing. And you Bama fans are slowly starting to realize and starting to be brought back down to reality. And another thing I noticed, these networks are starting to turn on you. They're starting to trade y'all in, Bama in, for Texas. Texas is becoming the new darling. Texas is becoming the new darling. But you see, it's only so long that you can hide Texas from the competition of the big boys of the SEC, because they're going to have to see the LSUs. They're going to have to see the Tennessees. They're going to have to see Bama. They're going to have to see the rest, the top, the top dogs of the SEC, and not hide behind a mediocre, weak-ass schedule that Greg Sankey them gave them this year. Just my opinion. Like I said, listen, I fund my own platform. I'm not handing no script. I say what I mean, and what I say comes from the heart. And I really do believe in my heart that this Texas team was set up schedule-wise to hoping that they would have a cakewalk to Atlanta, but this thing could easily backfire. It could easily backfire. And I'm not even going to get into that officiating stunt that was pulled in Austin the other night. I'll save that for my next live. But I just wanted to keep it SEC on this one. So these right here are my top 5 teams for week 9, going into week 9. At number 5, at number 5, the Tennessee Volunteers. The Tennessee Volunteers only have one loss. One loss. Great job against Bama. They played 60 minutes of football. At times, it looked like it was sort of slipping away, but Bama could not put them away. Bama could not put them away. At number 4, Texas. Texas ran into a buzzsaw. Simple as that. I'm not diminishing anything that they done this season. Now, they weren't tested. Yeah, true enough, they weren't tested, but they just ran into a buzzsaw. My Georgia Bulldogs. But Texas is still a good football team. LSU, remarkable job by Brian Kelly. Great. I think this is one of Brian Kelly's best coaching jobs. This has to go up there with the 2012 coaching job that he did for when he was with Notre Dame. So LSU is a dangerous team. Like I've been saying it all season, they are a dangerous team. As long as they're in it, they're going to give some teams some problems because it seems like they're getting better and better and better. They're improving as the week goes on. Remember, it ain't how you start, it's how you finish. The Texas A&M Aggies, they're a complete team. I think they're going to be a problem. And this is another team that could easily be undefeated. Just like my Georgia Bulldogs, they lost a nail biter to Notre Dame. They could easily be sitting at 7-0 right now as we speak. And number 1, my Georgia Bulldogs. Only one blemish on their record this season, and that was a fluke loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Other than that, these Georgia Bulldogs, they have, look, you're talking about we've only just begun. They've only just begun. They are peaking at the right time. They're starting to get players back healthy, and that light switch is turning on. And can you imagine what's going to happen? Let's talk about on the defensive side when Jordan Hall comes back. You think that D-line is a problem now? Wait till when Jordan Hall comes back. You think that ground game is going to be a problem? You think that our ground game is a problem now? With Trevor Etienne, wait till when Broderick Robinson comes back. Broderick Robinson is a bulldozer. That 4th and 1, 4th and 2, if we ever get in a situation where it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, or maybe even 3rd and 3, that would be automatic for Broderick Robinson. He is a bulldozer, Good luck trying to stop him at the goal line. So I want to thank everyone for coming out. This was my top 5. What do you think? What do you all think? Leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you all think. Who do you have? I mean, do you agree with the order? The top 5, my top 5. What is your top 5? And what order would you have the teams in? Leave a comment in the comment section. Make sure you hit that like button. Also share this video out. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, shame on you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, all right? And hit that bell so you can get all the notifications to all the lives that I'm going to have. I'm going to be bringing you content every day, dog call, and of course on the weekends with my brother and my brothers and my sister. You knew we're going to bring you the Friday kickoff show, the Saturday morning kickoff show, and the Saturday night post-game show. So for all of us here at 20 Esports Nation, I want to thank you all for supporting the platform. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Remember, hit that like button on your way out. Get home safely from work. And like I always say, take care of yourselves and each other. And one last thing for life. Go Dogs! Sick Crank them. Woo, 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 woo. Horns up. Sight. Horns down. Woo.